Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Leadership and Politics with Dr. Abraham. Well, with me today is Michael Rada, an inventor of Industry 5.0. It's a mechanism for reduction of environmental waste. Mr. Rada, how are you? Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, or as we say in Czech Republic, good midnight almost. So good evening to you, Abraham. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're most welcome. Now, Industry 5.0, that's an invention you have created, and
Yes.
you're sharing with the world. And I'm glad that you brought it to our attention, so this way we can shine a light on it. Anything to serve humanity, we are on its way. Tell me a little bit about yourself first before we go into the Industry 5.0.
So I am almost 50. I'm living in Czech Republic in Europe, and I spent over 30 years in companies and corporations, mainly specialized on the logistic point of view. I'm specializing myself in a global supply chain efficiency. I am realizing very special type of projects which everybody else refuse. I'm educating innovations and I'm implementing it in a real world environment. And 7 years ago, I have left second largest Japanese corporation and started to create a wasteless world, and Industry 5.0 is one of the tools which I have developed.
Okay. What is Industry 5.0? What is its purpose? What does it do?
So, first of all, it is important to say that Industry 5.0 is not the fifth industrial revolution. It is not. It is the first industrial evolution ever led by man, by human. And this is very important because all the others are aimed mainly to the volumes of production, to the speed of production. But Industry 5.0 get back the human touch, and not only the touch itself, but generally it is based on systematic waste prevention. So something which nobody ever considered it can be realized. And it was introduced on December 1st, 2015 by an article published by me. And since then, so since 5 years, it has prevented, together with industrial upcycling, it has prevented over 1 million metric tons of products and material to become waste. And in 2020, in connection with COVID-19, it was named as one of the tools for the post-pandemic recovery on a global scale, and this is why we have being at the moment implementing Industry 5.0 principles in almost all countries over the globe, starting building the global network. So I'm very happy I can be again in the US.
Thank you so much for explaining that and introducing Industry 5.0 to our audience and to me actually, because it's a new thing. I heard about it from you. And I'm so proud of you for being the force behind its promotion. So its purpose is to reduce waste in an environmental waste, right? In general.
In Industry 5.0, we understand 4 types of waste.
Go ahead.
The first is the physical trash. The second is social waste. To understand what I mean, these are people who would like to work but have no chance because of color of the skin, education, age. There are many criteria why you can be refused, even if you would like to, but you will be refused. The third one is urban waste. If you look around your cities, it's the same everywhere. There's a lot of brown fields which are empty. At the same time, growing big number of homeless people who does not have a roof above their heads, but we have empty buildings. And the fourth one is the so-called process waste. What to understand under process waste? For example, in European Union, according to the numbers of European Union, 64% of trucks are going empty on the roads.
So let's go through each one of these waste categories and tell
Okay.
me how does Industry 5.0 improve it or apply it. Environmental waste.
So the environmental waste, the main waste producers are industries, factories, logistic chains, and so on. And you find there a lot of so-called obsolete products. It can be packaging, it can be single use, it can be a lot of different items. It can be items, sorry, like this, which is a plastic box in which came from China, one sensitive part, it's taken out, and the consumer throw it away because it's a single-use package. It's made of plastic, and it is automatically rated as a waste after this single use
Yes.
because nobody, even in the legislation in US or as in the other countries, it is important to understand what is waste. And waste is something what you place on a location dedicated for waste storage. This is what the legislation says, which means it can be everything. Your new watch, your new computer, if it's dropped in a garbage bin, it becomes waste. And Industry 5.0 identify this type of production surplus. It does not only identifies, but it finds out what can be done with it. It processes it, which leads to the secondary utilization. So, for example, this box can be used again as a box.
So you have this box, and this box considered based on what you just said is a waste.
Yes.
Let's bring Industry 5.0 mechanism here. What is it? A machine? Is it a theory? What is Industry 5.0?
It's process. It's process. It's process of identification that something must not become waste.
How do they identify it? So a machine goes through a machine, or
the machine will not identify. Only the man can identify this. This is why the human touch is there. So the man can identify. There is a so-called methodology called 6R, and the first R out of this methodology is called recognize. So you have to recognize that something must not become waste. If you are working in a factory for longer than 6 months, you will not see this as a potential, because we call it professional blindness. You see it only as a waste. You do not see a product. So firstly, you have to recognize this is part of the Industry 5.0. The second step is reconsider, which means think about what it can become. Should it be box again, or should it be something different? This is much more harder than the point one. And the third point in the 6R, it's realize, which means do something with it. If you reconsider what, let's do it. And this is exactly, yes, and it is exactly what Industry 5.0 does. If you take the old waste management, then this will be waste and it will be scrapped, nothing else. And you as a factory, you will pay for scrapping. But in the Industry 5.0, you identify the value, you process it, and you can use the product again in the same form or in another one. There are many ways and many technologies, which means with waste prevention, you do not manage waste. The waste that does not become waste at all. I can show one example to understand better.
Yes.
How generally waste begins. This is what I developed 5 years ago. If we meet face to face for the first time, I am used to give you my business card. You take it, everything is fine. But please, right now, erase this and we meet again. But as we come to each other, somebody places in between us a clean new garbage bin. Okay? We do not ask why. It's not important. I come to you, I fall down, and my business card fall in the garbage bin. I do not have a second one, but you would like to have my business card. So I apologize again. I take it out, check it that it's not dirty or somehow polluted, hand it over to you. If you take it from me in Czech Republic, you take with it a penalty, right, for 1 million crowns. Do you know why? It's the same business card. It's clean. But the reason is it was placed in a location dedicated for waste storage, not intentionally, but the law doesn't care about intention. If it fall down in the garbage, you will pay as a owner of the garbage bin, for example, you will pay for scrapping, for waste management. But how you prevent the waste happen? Just stretch your hand and cut the stream between product and waste.
And waste. And 5.0, and this is 5.0.
This is the waste prevention, exactly. And this is waste prevention principle. Then it's much more complicated than many production and logistic. It's really complicated, and this is why my almost 30 years in logistic environment helped me a lot to understand the complexity and to set up the complexity. But you can do this way with almost every category of a so-called production surplus. Before it was waste, so you can do it. And interesting, it does not cost anything. You does not invest. You just cut the process. And this is the very different approach to circular economy, for example, which you have to invest a lot of money first. You get maybe something at the end. But with Industry 5.0, you do not have to invest any capital investment.
Why not?
Because you just stretch your hand. You just identify it. You throw before this in a garbage bin. In Industry 5.0.
Let's assume I have a factory.
Okay.
I bought something from another country or another vendor.
Yes, yes.
I used the item that is in that box. Now, and then I heard of Industry 5.0. I come to you and say, Michael, what do I do? You come to me and you say, this is a software, this is a machine, this is a theory. What is it? I want to know.
This is the methodology. So what you should do, because you recognize, you make already the first step. You recognize that this must not become waste because of this speech, so you recognize that. Then you need somebody who will think about what it can be used for.
Okay, utilization again. Okay.
It can be me, it can be somebody else in your company, for example. And the third one, you have to have someone to sell it as a product, not as a waste.
So I can put my own products in that the same.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, but many does not do that. Yes.
The money they don't exactly. That's where the waste is. So I can use it for my own purpose with other items. I can resell it if I have too many of them with the purpose I kind of find for it. I identify for it. And the last one?
And the last one is the realization, which means you sell it or you use it. This is the realization.
This is what Industry 5.0.
Yes, and what is interesting, because it does not become, thanks to these 3 points, it does not become waste. Your waste management cost will be reduced.
Yes.
And waste management costs are very high cost and growing.
I think it's worldwide, not only in the Czech Republic. And then when you resell it, you actually capitalize on it because it came to you free anyway, or probably you paid a little bit of freight. So you capitalize on it. Now,
yes.
Are you going to say the same thing to the other vendor that purchased it, and the cycle continues, or we're gonna have, or it depends on the conscience and know-how and knowledge of the other vendor to actually not put it in the waste?
We are trying all the time to implement within the whole supply chain, which means we can repeat this operation several times, depending on the item, of course. And it depends on one more thing, because one of the processing is that you will crash it and make something different out of it.
At the end of it, recycling, yes.
you can recycle only waste. This is important. If we do it, we upcycle it. Upcycling is not recycling, because recycling is connected only to waste. Cycling is connected to product.
Oh, okay, continue on that part.
So if there is an end of life and you have to crash it, and you can even burn it, made out of it the energy, or this is a plastic, you can make crude oil out of it. The methodology exists for 35 years already. It's called pyrolyze. So we are trying to really close the loop, but we start a very different way than the circular economy does, because they say waste is treasure, but for me, the waste should not happen.
Try to reduce it, and try to reduce waste, because it's very difficult, but at least help to reduce it to a very, very minimal amount.
And we are able to have factories which reduce by 80 to 90% their waste volumes.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can imagine, when I was in a factory which asked me just for a wooden pallet utilization, and I come there and there is a return, it's a wholesaler for fruits and vegetables to retailers in Czech Republic. And there was a return, a full truck of radish, just because it was a little bit dry, a little bit. And the first what they did immediately, they throw all the radish, full trucks, 20 tons, in a garbage bin.
Wow.
Nobody cared.
How would Industry 5.0 would have eliminated such move, such a very sad move? Because they could have given it to the homeless, they could have given it to places with poverty everywhere.
They return it because the leaves has been dry. But if you do a frozen vegetables, you don't use the leaves. So there is one process, freezing. Next process, you can make out of it another products which you do not use the leaves. You can even consume it. You can give it to, you can sell it to agriculture. There's a lot of, we found 5 different operations which can be done with it. And we start to implement. The issue is that one day it's a radish, but the second day it's tomato. The third day it can be filled with bananas. I don't know.
Thank you. So, because I'm learning as I go with you, and I kind of, my mind now is wondering, sustainability comes to mind. Sustainability. Now, do you need government help on this, or only private enterprises and large corporations can be of assistance to you?
To answer that, we ran operation for 7 years. No funding, no investment, we just generate money by our project and grow. And we have been able to prevent 1 million ton.
That's amazing.
Which means it's self-sustainable on economical, so as a material way.
Mm-hmm.
It will be big help if governments implement the waste prevention in the legal frame. We are just now negotiating with several countries, including India, including New Zealand. We even discuss one project in US referring to secondary utilization or landfilling of the wind blades of the big power stations. Unfortunately, it was not successful, but I hope the next project will be.
Really what they need is education, and you coming on this show and explaining what it is and identifying its benefits to society. Because the first thing when we talked earlier, I wanted to know how it benefits society. And based on what you just explained in this 15, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you have explained that it does affect society and the environment, and it has other potentials, which is also not necessarily that there is a human components of waste, not the human waste as we know it, the human components of waste, which is the second stage, right? Second category. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so the second category, as I mentioned, these are people who would like to work but have no possibility. usually in Czech Republic at least, or in Europe, it's not the same category as the category on unemployment offices.
Okay.
It can be people who are too young, students, who are too old, seniors. They are very different. Because processing of this stuff, if I would like to make not just another box out of it, but something different, it cannot be done by machines. It cannot be done because it's really handmade. 90% of the project is handmade. These images behind me,
What do we have behind you?
this one, these are
What do we have there? Tell me.
out of vinyl records. Each is 6 hours of work. And these vinyl records are directly from in Czech Republic, it's the biggest producer in the world. It's close to here. It is one of my clients. And we find out every day they throw away, because of the sound quality, up to 10,000 vinyl records. And we have to find a way how to utilize it. So part is cut, part is made into bowls, part is used in architecture, for example, and so on. So we have 5 different processing categories. But back to the people, the machine cannot cut this because every vinyl record is slightly different, behaves slightly different. This is why it's obsolete. And only men can do it. So we are spreading these opportunities to work to people. And it's very important, the people creativity, because the machine will see only a broken vinyl record and nothing else. But a man can see a picture of the first Czech president, for example.
So if you give this container to the people you're trying to employ, you would actually see the curiosity by finding other solutions and other uses for this specific container or package. Very powerful.
This piece of art, it's made out of used potato chips bags. It was originally bag, and just now it's a beautiful, of course, you see the size. So it's 400 years old methodology of origami utilized with new materials, which means this type of bag, which is 3-layer bag, which is commonly used for potato chips and for similar. Handmade in a disabled workshop.
Tell me about that. How it's applicable to your 5.0, Mr. 5.0.
Okay, so it's the urban waste. This is the waste in the cities, which consists generally of 2 categories. One is the brownfield, which is not only industrial brownfields, so empty factories, but even as social brownfields, which are empty buildings, empty houses because of some reason. But the second category, which is interesting, are green fields, which are built next to the old factories. Why there has to be built a new building where there is the old one? So the utilization of those, it's very underestimated by city governments. And it's wrong. If you consider just that 95% of your office buildings in your city are empty. 95%. When? After the shift.
During the day, it's full. At night, there's nothing happening.
Why? We can use it for some purpose. Of course, it's not easy, but it can be done.
The logic behind it. So tell me, how can we use it? So are you saying we can have double shifts, or what other uses can you use it for?
Quite interesting project came from US.
Okay.
They utilize the parking buildings in the evening where they are generally empty in the office area. They use it for the homeless people to sleep in.
Wow.
And it's a US project.
Is that happening?
I am not sure if it's still running. I can find somewhere the information about,
Wow, that's
but I
amazing.
think it is because it was quite successful at that time. But I have to check. I am not updated about all the projects. I can tell you at the end of last year, a client, industrial client, called me that he has too much packaging in his factory. 5 football fields filled of packaging, 5,000 square meters. But some of the packaging are metal cages of the dimension of 3 meters by 2.5 by 2.5. It's generally a small building. So we use it, we cover it, and we have shelters. But the cost of the shelter was below 50 US dollars.
You use it shelter for homeless?
Yes.
And that project went into effect and people are using it?
It was not big one, but it was interesting.
No, what I'm liking the idea is you seek the mind to be activated.
This is generally the logic behind. I am not doing anything new. I am taking something what exists and combine it in a non-existing way. In my city, there are city buses produced and trams and so on. At the end of life, they are scrapped. But every bus is a building. Every single one. And they are great projects. Every single shipping container can be a part of a building. There is so much and so many which are coming back to the support. If there will be strong investors, there will be a huge immediate change immediately, because Industry 5.0 is using so-called, all this stuff, it's called on-the-ground mind. Something what already exists here, only we do not utilize it. We just look a different way. And we calculated, we spent 5 years to calculate how much savings globally can be achieved if industries prevent waste happen. The number is interesting. 475 trillion US dollars a year, and there are 2 industries not included. War industry, which did not provide us any data, and the crude oil industry. So I think we can even triple this or even more this amount, because these 2 industries are the
most producing. Yes.
Yes, and the waste industry is the 3rd most profitable industry in the world. So you see how big change can be achieved, and generally there is no investment at the beginning. You just have to recognize that something must not become waste and process it. And for this, you need the brain, the machine, even the artificial intelligence. It's great. We use it as well.
It will be used wisely. And it will also help them not to consider everything waste.
We have to change the definition of waste as well, because the definition is really made for everything to become waste. They do not speak about material, they do not speak about new or old, they do not speak about anything like that.
So when you reduce this waste, you actually really help the environment as well, Mike.
Climate, environment, people, because
people lives.
This is why I call it evolution, because it's completely new environment in which man, machine, and nature live in harmony. And it's not, I'm not creating it as an NGO or so. There is a lot of money behind which you can save, and you can profit as well.
But you really need a civilized mindset to think like you. Not like this. That sounds good.
When I enter a company, no matter which one, I ask the CEO, because this is usually the first person I speak with, or the owners. I ask only one question for 7 years. Do you want to generate waste or profit?
The
And
answer is profit.
in 7 years, I get only one answer.
Mhm.
And this is why the industry supported, this is why it goes really global in 2020, thanks to COVID, because I do not ask them to invest money. I am coming to save their money. And even we generate from something what was a cost center, we generate a profit center without any investment. We save 50 million without investment. And the hardest part in the project was to explain to the Japanese manager, to the Japanese CEO, how he can save 50 million crowns, which is about 2 million US dollars, without investing a single penny.
From the resources they have, you were able to save them $2 million
Yes.
by implementing Industry 5.0, by implementing a philosophy, a new innovation and mindset.
I call it, I am changing the mindset from wasteful to wasteless.
Bravo, I like it. Good. Tell me a little bit about the fourth category and how does it work?
So it's called process waste,
Okay.
and it's connected with the process of work, which means, for example, as one example, very few people can imagine that at least 50% of the shipping containers globally are running empty.
Why?
Why? Because the balance between I don't know exactly the numbers, but between the trade between China and US, it's mainly the goods came from China to US,
Okay.
but you have to get the containers back.
And they go mostly empty because we don't have the same.
And they are not collapsible. But exist a collapsible container, which will allow that on one ship you can get 5 times more empty containers.
From the same source. And Industry 5.0 would advocate for such process?
We first part, it's the package, which means the container. We will advise to make it collapsible, which means when empty, you collapse it. You have it 5 times on a place of 1. This is the first. The second, we will try to find and harmonize, because there exists a flow outside from US to China, exist, but the industries do not talk together. They don't. But if they started to talk together, then they do not have to use 2 containers for one there and one, but they can use only one and fill it in both ways. This is, in logistics generally, this process is called milk run process. You all the time have something inside. And you can do it up to the container size. You can do it up to planes and so on. So it must not be just the milk bottle, but I implement these projects and I made a lot of calculations for my clients to make it efficient. And this is just one example. Generally, if you process something, you can do it the wrong way, and this is process waste. In storing goods in warehouses for a long time, it's process waste. And there is a lot of process waste. Process waste is in almost every factory and company. It can be even a bank. There is a lot of process waste. For example, you print something what you do not have to print. You can have it only in digital form. But because it was a habit to print it, then you stay with the habit. And this is a process waste.
Very, very powerful. If somebody wants to know more about Industry 5.0, where do they go?
Generally, my advice is input these words in a Google search. Probably the first which will come will be my definition published, and you will come to my site.
What's your website?
It's called like my company, ibcsd.com. BIZ like business, IBCSD biz, and then you are on a right way to see more. This is the English one. I have another website.
Thank you for your time.
So thank you. Thank you.